Hello and welcome. This is Paracuties, and this is my champion tier list guide to monthly challenges in the Path of Champions. For this, we'll be talking about all the champions available to Path of Champions as of November 2023, which is going to be the first month that we have with rewards for the monthly challenges. So using this guide will help to allow you to kind of prioritize which champions to save, which champions to use for harder, difficult challenges, just to kind of give you an idea. It also is very handy as to giving you an idea of which champions you should be prioritizing with star powers and levels. Now, I did rate these assuming that the champions are 3 stars and level 30. And the reason I did that is because you kind of need to compare champions on an even playing field, and it becomes a bit awkward to do that at lower levels. But for the most part, this does actually apply to lower level champions as well. And I mean, the end goal is you probably do want to get your champions 3-starred and level 30 at some point. So it still gives you a good idea as to which champions to prioritize for star powers and levels. All right, let's jump into the list here. So here's the list. And like I said, we'll go over each champion here. So the S tier are the best of the best. These are the champions that you want to use for the most difficult runs. And they are very good even with a limited selection of relics. One thing I should also mention is if you want to do all 70 challenges, I highly, highly recommend that you complete all the level 2 adventures that provide you with a rare relic at the end. And you can find that out. I do have that on my database if you're not sure which champions have that. Anyway, let's get on to the list here. So our S tiers, we've got Jinx, LeBlanc, Jax, Diana, Gwen. These are all fantastic champions. They're all aggressive. There's a reason for that, because aggression is just good in Path of Champions, especially for monthly challenges, but it's just good in Path of Champions in general. We'll go over kind of what they do very quickly. So for Jinx, Jinx is basically just play cards win. Her star powers are ridiculous. She does damage to the Nexus. She does damage to random enemies. In terms of your builds that you're going to use for monthlies, you probably want to use Scourge's Stash and Loose Cannon Payload. I think the third slot is a flex slot. You can use whatever you like, but I find that Stash plus Payload is going to make a very easy run for you. Next, we've got LeBlanc. Again, this is just a hyper-aggressive champion. And I'll show you this build. So this is an interesting build that I have, which is the triple stalkers. And this would just basically ensure that you're going to be completely wiping out their board constantly, because Stalker's Blade is not a play effect. It is a summon effect. So anytime you use the mirror image on LeBlanc, you're going to kill 3 units pretty much. And yeah, basically they'll never have a board. So you can play like this hyper control, hyper aggro LeBlanc. Back in the day, we also used to play with 3 Gatebreakers. Now, Gatebreakers nerf does make 3 Gatebreakers extremely awkward for her. Like, you probably do not want to do... Sorry, I passed right by it. You probably don't want to do 3 Gatebreakers because of the -1 debuff. So... I like the Stalkers, but you can do the Gatebreaker if you want to, but I find the Stalkers works really well. Like, I feel like she's almost unbeatable with the Stalkers. It's kind of crazy. I actually have Jax here as my third because he is just kind of crazy, especially once you get him up to 3rd star power. Basically, every time you attack, your units, which are almost always going to be equipped, so they're basically getting +3/+1. And then on a champion like Jax, who already has quick attack because of his equipment, like this just gets out of control. Like it's just hyper aggression. I do like to use stalkers on him as well. The Chemtech is just memeing here, but if you do double stalkers, it works really well. Diana is very similar to Jax. I do find she's like maybe just a hair slower, just a hair slower. You can do stalkers. You can do. There's a lot of builds you can do. You can do overwhelm with her. I see people still using Gale Force for her. I think these are all fine. And then the last one there is Gwen. I do want to just say, because I've seen some people kind of debating this, but I do think that Gwen's third star power is really good. So the third star power, so the first star power gives you a Ghastly Band when you don't have the attack token, and the third star power gives you a Ghastly Band every round start. And I think this is really, really important. I think people underappreciate that because Gwen is ultimately a hyper aggressive deck. Like you don't care about the Ghastlies that much for the hollowed count. Like, I mean, it's good. Like, obviously that's important, but the reason is because you want to be hyper aggressive and you want to be swinging in with that Ghastly Band. So I think getting her to 3 stars is actually quite good. All right, let's go back to the list. Let's talk about our A tiers. So here we're going to see a bunch of different types of champions. So S tier is all aggression, keeping your enemies off the board and winning the game relatively fast. The LeBlanc, you can sometimes take your time just because they can literally never get a unit off on you, which is really funny. But they're all aggressive champions. So in A, we see kind of some control champions. So Yasuo and Ashe are 2 of the control champions, and they are also very, very good for monthly challenges. These are champions you do want to have 3-starred because both of them will get their stun or freeze every turn when they're 3-starred. This can be very valuable for some like hyper aggressive enemy mutators. There's also just some hyper aggressive decks as well. So getting these champions 3-starred makes them extremely valuable, and you will definitely want them in your toolbox. These are like this tier is a lot of toolbox as you'll see. Samira is interesting because she is also a aggressive champion, but at the same time, she also works well with some mutators. So basically, you can use the Samira to take advantage of her mana reduction just to do a lot of stuff on turn 1 or the first 2 turns. And there are a few mutators where the opponent will just basically start the game with a lot of stuff. So Samira is kind of nice for that. The other thing that Samira is really nice for is there is a mutator that locks you into 4 mana, and Samira lets you abuse that because you can essentially play 7 mana cards still in a sense. So she's very valuable. So she's both aggressive and toolboxy is I guess what I'm trying to say. I'm going to jump over to Varus. So Varus is another toolboxy champion that's very good. There are mutators that have all units have permanent spell shield, and this is kind of insane for Varus because you can literally just sit on Varus, make him massive with redoubling Valords off him, and the enemy cannot do anything about this. I'll just quickly show you my Varus build. So I've got literally double him and Chemtech, which is like, this is overkill. Like, honestly, 1 him is probably good enough. If you have him and Chemtech, that's even better. But yeah, no, if he has permanent spell shield, they just cannot deal with his stats. It's really funny. Nidalee is really interesting because she can also kind of bypass some stuff as well with the transform. And she also can put down quite a bit of stats in the first couple turns as well to stabilize against hyperaggression as well. And then Kindred, honestly, Kindred is basically LeBlanc without the aggression. What I mean by that is Kindred will make sure that they never have a board. And I'll show you the Kindred build. It's actually really straightforward. It's actually just double Stalkers and Guardian Angel. Oh yeah, I have them at the bottom here. Okay, so the idea here is you are going to kill your own Kindred with Spirit Journey. The Guardian's Angel will make it so that you get back 2 Kindreds, and they both will use their Stalker's Blade. So very, very similar to LeBlanc. You just keep killing and reborning your Kindred, and they can never have a board. Hyper Control, they never have a board. The only difference between this and LeBlanc is LeBlanc also just happens to be aggressive, whereas Kindred is a little bit less aggressive. But yeah, no, that's why Kindred is in the A tier. All right, let's go down to the B tier. So here we have kind of a mix of toolboxy, slightly slower champions, but strong champions. So for like Garen pretty much is exactly all of that. He's 5 mana, so he doesn't come down the fastest, but his star power with the at 3 stars, the +2/+2 when a unit fights another one, means that Garen's effect is helping a lot before you get the Garen out. Like, he's still very valuable because of his star powers. And it's a very strong star power. Like, I mean, there's just going to be a lot of mutators where they can summon out a bunch of baby units, and you basically farm them with Garen. So, really good champion for that reason. Lux is... A lot of people get tricked into thinking that Lux is a spellcaster champ, and she's not really. She actually is another kind of board, kind of grindy, removal plus board presence champion. I will warn you that Lux is a little bit slow. There was actually almost... there was one challenge that I almost lost because her deck was too slow and I underestimated it. But ultimately, the big thing with Lux, the really big thing with Lux, is her rallies. So we'll just kind of look at it here. So each round... Oh, no, sorry, not that one. When you play 6+ mana of spells, create a 0-cost Golden Aegis. This is really what you kind of are abusing Lux for, more than the mana refill. I mean, not saying that the mana refill is bad or anything like that. Not by any means. But, like, realistically, the win con is going to be your rallies, because you can just spam rallies like crazy with Lux. And there's going to be a few mutators that you'll find where you kind of want this, where you just want to just hold them off the first few turns, and then you kind of want like a huge turn where you're attacking many times, like around like your third or fourth or fifth turn maybe. So if you see a mutator like that, where you know, like going into it, that you're not going to be able to do much at the beginning, and then you're going to be able to kind of burst out, Lux is going to be a good choice for that. Master Yi. So I have Master Yi very high on my list, and there's a reason for that. It's because he works really well with a lot of mutators. Where is he? And it all has to do with this one tiny little thing called Wuju Styles with Hero's Horn. So this essentially can make Yi into infinite very easily. Basically, there are some mutators that will reduce the cost of all cards or reduce the cost of spell cards. And once you get your Wuju style cheap, especially like if you can kind of get rid of the meditate so they don't clog your hand, you will go infinite. You just go infinite because you play the Wuju style, it will shuffle a Yi back into your deck, you draw the Yi, and repeat. And so that's why Yi is rated so high, because there actually are a lot of mutators that he just goes infinite. And honestly, you kind of can't lose. Like, it's almost difficult to lose. You basically have to somehow not draw your Yi, and it just has to be a complete disaster for you to lose. So that's why Yi is so high, because he's this toolbox, but he is like this key to a lock where if you get this specific mutator, he almost can't lose. And I mean, you can't beat that, right? Nami. So Nami is probably our best caster champion. Um, I mean, Nami is pretty straightforward. You're just gonna spam ebb and flow. So if you see a mutator that you can spam ebb and flow, you probably want Nami. So something with spell mana reduction, something with spell mana refill. Um, there's too many to mention, but yeah, if you see something, if you see a mutator that you know in your back of your mind you can be like, oh yeah, spamming ebb and flow will be just insane with this, then Nami's going to be a solid pick. Ilaoi, I actually have her pretty high up just because she's kind of the anti-toolbox. And what I mean by that is if you see a mutator and you're like, I want a champion that can just ignore what the enemy is doing and this champion does their own thing and just wins, then you want Ilaoi. If that makes sense. So sometimes like a lot of monthly challenges is going to be counterpicking enemy mutators, counterpicking enemy champions. Ilaoi is the one that you almost don't even consider that. Ilaoi is just like, I just want to ignore what the enemy is doing here and just win through her win con. And she can do that. I mean, there are mutators that do synergize with her. There's mutators that help you spawn tentacles. They don't, honestly, it doesn't even matter. They don't even matter. Ilaoi just wins by doing her own thing. That's why I like her. That's why she's up there on B+. Aatrox. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So Aatrox is probably not a B+ champion in regular path, although that's debatable. He's really good. But I find that he's really good for monthly challenges. I mean, it just comes down to his mana reduction power. You do want your Aatrox to be 3 stars. I'll tell you that now. I didn't realize this until I 3-starred him, but boy, does it make a difference. So at 1 star, he has a mana reduction of 1 when an equipped ally strikes. But at 3 stars, the mana reduction becomes 2. And this is really, really significant. Again, you're using the Aatrox to just keep your opponent off the board. I have triple stalkers, which is not necessary. Honestly, double stalkers is fine. You don't need the third. You can put whatever you like as the third. You could put like Lost Chapter, and that's completely fine. You could put Troll King Crown. That's completely fine. You could put even Laurent Blade Rack so that your other things are getting Challenger too. Like, I mean, the third slot is flex. But 3-star Aatrox, you know, with his Stalker's Blades, really does control the board really well. And that's why he's so high. And then my last B+ here is Jhin. Jhin is good. Jhin is, like, sometimes I forget how good he is. Because I know he's good, but I forget just how good he is. And the Jhin playstyle is pretty obvious. You want double Riptide, so definitely look in the Emporium to try to find a second Riptide. And essentially what you're doing is you want to use this on a mutator where it's kind of like the opposite of those aggressive champs where you need to get your board down fast. Jhin is more like, I just need to sit on doing not much the first 2 turns, first 3 turns even sometimes. And then I'm going to drop Jhin and just completely wipe them, completely take out their entire board, and put down a huge Jhin that they can't deal with. I mean, it's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. So the staple relics for him are going to be the double Riptide batteries. The third one is Flex. I was using Chemtech. It's really funny. I mean, there's a lot of options you can do on him. Just keep in mind this Jhin is going to be big, so even things like Overwhelm are really good for him too. All right, so that's the B+ tier. We'll go to the Bs. I'll talk less about the lower tier ones. I just want to talk more about these high tier ones because they're important. So Annie is really cool because she has a lot of different builds that you can do. This one here is my Annie machine gun. So you can use this where you just want to focus on a narrow board. So for example, there's a mutator where all units are destroyed at the end of turn except for each player's strongest. If you do this build with Annie, basically they'll just never have a board. Or they'll have to like poop out their whole hand and then basically have no cards for the rest of the game. So yeah, I mean, this is one build, and then obviously there's like tons and tons of other builds that you can do with Dreadway's Chase Gun. You can use like double Dreadways and Ludens. You can do Grand General Counterplan is really good with her too because of her her spell card. There's a lot of options. So she's very flexible, and that's why I do like the Annie. But I like in of herself, I don't think she's like the strongest, but she's very flexible. Miss Fortune is high on the list. Reason for that is because she does counter a few mutators really hard. Basically, if you need something that's going to be doing widespread 1 damage, Miss Fortune is a great option. Usually what I'm doing with her is Grand General Counterplan so that you can keep using Make It Rain with her. And also, she also is very good for mutators where you need chump blockers because at the 3 stars, she's getting the Powdered Monkey every turn. So she's a really good one for chump blocking as well. Kindred also kind of does that, but because Kindred is so good at Stalker's Blade spam, you almost don't need the chump blockers. It's really funny. Like it's overkill. Whereas MF is one where maybe you want to save your Kindred, but you want some chump blockers. You can use the MF and basically just use your monkeys as defense. Nico's up here as well, and Teemo. Actually, I'm going to talk about these two together. The reason why these two are high is because they're really cheap champions that do stuff. So 1 to 2 cost champions means that you're getting the effect of your relics very quickly. And you can you can do a lot of things with that. You can either use them as aggressive builds. You can either use that as a defensive build. So, for example, with Nico, sometimes I even use her. I'll show you a build that I sometimes use with Nico. But you can absolutely make her an aggressive build. But oh yeah. Here's a kind of like a hybrid build where you can use her for epic item spam with Guardian's Orbs and Counterplan. You can also do Counterplan with Chemtech Duplicator. I like this one a lot as well. I'll do like Chemtech with Archangels, and then when you play your Shape Splitter, you'll get 2 copies of the Nico once you're Chemtech, of course, and then the Archangels will make sure you always have mana for that. And basically, once you get a free Shape Splitter every turn with 2 extra Nikos, you easily just grind them out of the enemy out of resources. So you can play Nico defensively, you can play her aggressively, and then for Teemo you pretty much just want to use aggressively, but because he's 1 mana, like that just really helps you do that quickly. I do actually have Elise a little bit lower just because she's not as flexible. So like I said with the Nico, you can go aggressive or you can go control. The Elise, even though she's only 2 mana, she's actually more control-y. I mean, you can do a Corrupted Star Fragment build that's a little bit more aggressive, but even then, she's a bit more slower, a bit more control-y. So she's good, but she's not to the same level as those two, I would say. Vi, I have pretty high up, which is funny because I just read a Reddit post that said that Vi is the worst champion and needs to be buffed. I think that person is very unintelligent, to say the least, because Vi is very good. I will say that her impact star power doesn't make a lot of sense, but I mean, that doesn't even matter. So the +0, +2 actually does matter. It doesn't matter on the Vi. It's going to matter for your first few turns because, I mean, like her deck is pretty like straightforward. You're going to play Poros and cheap stuff in the first few turns, and then you're going to finish them off with your big Vi. So this +0, +2 does help a lot for the early turns so that your small stuff can chump block twice sometimes. I mean, it doesn't always, but sometimes it does. The impact is just like fluff. Like sometimes it does help you get over the top to make sure you have lethal, but sometimes it doesn't really matter. But ultimately, what you want to do is not this build. This build is fine. This build is fine, but no, this is not the main build that I would use for monthlies. I will show you what we do, and that is Gatebreaker, and the super duper special tech Caulfield's Hammer. So by doing this, it ensures that the Vi is still going to be 10 attack when she comes down. She's going to hit the Nexus for 20, and then so she comes down, she hits the Nexus for 20, she levels up, and then if you have the attack token, you're doing at least another 5 damage by her level up power. So that's 25 damage. And then if you were able to chip in the first few turns, either just with an attack or with impact damage, you can see how it's pretty easy to get to the number 30. And most monthly challenges are 30 HP. Later on at the very end, there are some 40s and 50s, but a lot of them are 30 HP. So yeah, so 10 plus 10 plus 5 gets you pretty close to lethal against most of these challenges. So I use this build. She's very valuable for this reason. B tier is respectable. Echo and Volibear I've got up here as well. Echo, I'll talk about Echo quickly. Echo is a bit of an awkward one because he's a very good champion, but he doesn't really have a specific mutator counterpick. So he's basically just a champion that you use where it's like, I can't think of a good champion to counter this mutator, but I just want to use someone that's half decent. So that's what your Echo is going to do. He's going to be your half decent champion that isn't really he's not really a key to a lock. He's just good. So you just use him when you need to. Don't worry too much about trying to counterpick with Echo. Just use him, more sparingly, I guess. But when you want somebody that's half decent but doesn't need to be specific for the mutator. Voli, there's 2 builds for Voli. I should have one of them loaded up here. Yes, sir. Behold the face Voli. Yeah, this is the Voli face build. So this one you can just kind of grease out a win pretty quickly. There's really not much to say. You're gonna hit face for at least 21. Probably more, because probably some Relentless Storms are going to go face as well. So this is basically kind of like your Vi. Very, very similar to your Vi, where it's like, once the volley comes down, it's going to almost kill the Nexus, so you only have to do like a little bit of damage around it, and then you should have lethal. Yeah. And this one you don't, unlike Vi, you can actually just go triple Gatebreaker, it's fine. The other volley build is a bit more control-y, so it's Stalkers. I would do probably double Stalkers, and I don't know what I would do for the third one. I might actually keep one Gatebreaker, but you can also use volley as a control, clear the board type of thing, and that's fine too. So you can do Stalkers on him too. I think either or is fine. Okay, C plus tier. We'll talk about this one. Actually, there are some interesting toolboxes, so we actually will talk about this one a little bit more. Vayne is kind of like Echo. She's a good champion that isn't like a huge counter pick to anything. There is one mutator where all units get Scout, which is really interesting with Vayne. But other than that, there isn't any specific mutators that she counters or favors, so she's just kind of like a good champion that you can use when you want to. At least we kind of talked about as well. So she's kind of like this champion that is a little bit more control-y, a little bit more safe, like for your board protection. But she's less safe than an MF, for example, because MF is just getting free monkeys, whereas at least you need to actually do something to get your spiders, if that makes sense. Neela, I don't have a lot of experience with Neela since she's pretty new, but I think this is where I kind of want her kind of in the middle, because her duplication effect is super strong. So basically, just want to abuse the duplication effect. So kind of like Vayne, she doesn't really counter anything specific. You just kind of use her when you need somebody that's half decent. Now these last four are really interesting because they're all counter picks. So that's why I'm going to be talking a little bit more about these ones. So Jack is kind of like MF, where you need a champion that can just do these bursts of 1 damage to everything. So any champion or any foe that basically has like stuff like Poros, or there are some that have powdered monkeys. There's a few mutators where just being able to do that 1 chip damage to everything kind of sets them back a ton. So Jack is really good for that. So use Jack as a counter pick for that. Tahm Kench is a counter pick for some as well, because there's going to be some, for example, like the Tryndamere effect. I forget the name of it, but if you guys have done the Thresh run, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first time a unit dies, it doesn't die, and it gets tough and overwhelm and fearsome. Tahm Kench bypasses that because when he eats something, he obliterates it. He doesn't kill it. So he's really toolboxy for that. And then he's really toolboxy for another thing. So there's a mutator where all your units take 1 damage at the end of turn. And when you have Tahm Kench, if you guys don't know, his star power 2, it's kind of insane because he will grow. He will grow because he literally does. He gets plus when any ally survives damage, they get +2/+2. So if they take 1 damage, they're literally growing. So yeah, Tahm Kench is an awesome counter pick. The only reason I have him low is because you pretty much can only use him for counter picking. I feel like you don't really use him for other things, but there are enough counter picks that he's very handy. Kayn is another counter pick, which I used to have Kayn a lot lower. I think I had him in C or D. And I've moved him up. And the reason for that is because we're actually seeing more mutators that favor him. One of the big ones is actually Formidable. So because Kayn has this big health, here he is. Because he has big health, he actually like really gets favored by Formidable. And this is the build that I usually use for him. So Stalkers, and whatever. Him works pretty good. I mean, there's tons of options you can do, but you definitely wanted to use 2 Stalkers so that he levels immediately. And then when he levels, he goes back to your hand, you play him again, and you get 2 more strikes. So you're basically striking for 4 when you drop the Kayn. So you do have to hang on until you reach the 5 mana mark. But once you do, it's kind of like Jhin. Actually, he's a lot like Jhin. Basically, you kind of give the opponent the first few turns, and then you drop the Kayn, completely wipe them out, and use the Kayn to kind of bully them out from there. So very much like Jhin. He's just worse than Jhin because Jhin is bigger when he comes down. Because Jhin is going to be like 10-10, 12-12 or something like that when he comes down, whereas Kayn is not going to be as big. But he's basically like a Jhin there. Veigar. Okay. Yeah, we definitely need to talk about Veigar. So Veigar is also going to be a huge counter pick. Veigar is also one you want to have 3 start powered, specifically so that his darkness costs 0. So you're using Veigar for there's going to be some mutators where it's not just that they can go wide, but they can have annoying units, like stuff like small elusives, things like that. And like basically it's basically kind of like Jack and MF, except instead of trying to kind of go wide across the board, you're using the Veigar to pick off the units, pick off the bothersome units. Anything with like stealth, or sorry, not stealth, stealth. Anything with elusive or I don't know, like maybe like a fearsome that's annoying or something like that. So Veigar does actually come in handy because there isn't that many caster champions that can ping off just these small threats. And then ultimately, you use Veigar as the win con with Chemtech. I have Grand General Counterplan. I don't think I actually do recommend that. I think the most important relics for him are Chemtech and maybe some mana regen, maybe. Yeah, I mean you can. Counterplan is really not necessary. I don't know why I have it on him. I would probably honestly rather just honestly just probably give him +0/+3 is fine too, because you do want him to live once he comes down so that your darknesses are getting stronger. All right, we are on the C tier, so we'll go a little bit faster here. Poro King, he's a bit. The problem with Poro King is he costs 5 mana because his deck is great. Like, I mean, being able to go wide, spam the Poros, is great, but you can't really take advantage of his relics as much because you can't get him on the board that quickly. So Poro King is going to be good with mutators that give you more keywords, because ultimately, like, what you want to use Poro King for is having 4 keywords so that you can buff your board quickly. So anytime there's a mutator that gives you more keywords in whatever way, Poro King is a solid choice there. But he's a bit slow. Like, in terms of, like, I used to think of Poro King as being really good for boards that want to go wide against a mutator, but I'll be honest with you, Elise is just so much better for that. I'd rather have spiders and an Elise on 2 mana than Poros and a Poro King on 5, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying that Poro King is a worse Elise, because Poro King obviously is much better if you can get 4 keywords. So, but they do have some overlap. Yumi, there isn't too much to say for that. So there's going to be some challenges where you want to go all in on one unit. For example, the one where all units except for each player's strongest dies, then you could consider using a Yumi there. I mean, it's going to be pretty obvious. It's the ones where you want to make a really big, tall unit, you can use Yumi. Talia is kind of like Echo and Neela. So she's just a good champion that it doesn't actually have any specific counter picks. It's kind of funny because when I started monthlies, I honestly thought, oh, there's probably going to be some landmark synergy that you can use Talia with. There really isn't, actually. It's really weird. There really isn't a good landmark that you want to copy. So you're just using her just because she's good, essentially. Gnar is kind of like your budget Vygar because you can use the pokey sticks to poke off stuff, but he's worse than Vygar. So yeah, that's Gnar. Lee Sin is interesting because he also, you can consider doing like using Lee Sin in these. I want to go really tall with one unit, but the problem is, of course, with Lee Sin is you have to play your spells to get him tall. So he's kind of just like a harder to use Yumi in some ways, but that's not to say that he's bad. Like there's like I've definitely used Lee Sin for some mutators and been like, wow, Lee just completely destroyed that. Set is a bit slow, but if there is a mutator that allows him to accelerate, and the obvious one is going to be guided meditation. That's the karma power. That's the both players start with 10 mana. Set just shines in that. Honestly, I would just use Set for like all the guided meditation karma powers, because he's just free win, and like, I mean, you're not probably going to use that much Set otherwise, so why not? D tier, yeah, these ones we'll talk less about. Evelynn, so it does pain me to put Evelynn in D, but the reason why I put her in D is not because she's not good, because she is very good. The problem with Evelynn is she can be inconsistent. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like sometimes with Evelynn I draw really bad, and that's going to lose you games every so often. Like with Evelynn, you really do need to draw the Evelynn a lot of the time. Like sometimes if you don't draw the Evelynn, like it feels like your deck does like nothing or very little. And even just kind of like curving out, I find Evelynn's deck sometimes has awkward curves, and you can fall behind. And Evelynn herself is not a great catch-up mechanic. She, if you can play everything on curve, she's a very good mid-range deck. But if you miss your curve, she has trouble catching up. I think that's the best way to explain it. So yeah, so the thing with Evelynn is she's a very good champion, but just because you can draw badly, she's a little bit of a risk, and that's why I have her low. That's it. I mean, if she draws well, she's as good as like the B tiers, no question about that. But because there's the risk that you can low roll your draws, I have her lower. Janna is weird because I thought Janna was going to be really good for monthlies, but she's okay. She's just okay. Um, the problem with Janna is her removal spells cost a lot of mana. So you're basically always playing catch up. Like they're gonna play a 2-drop, and you're not gonna be able to kill it. Like so they're gonna play a 2 mana thing, and you're not gonna be able to kill it until you have 3 mana. Then they play a 3 mana thing, and then you can't kill it until you have like 4 or 5 mana, and you're just always playing catch up, and that's awkward. That's awkward. That's it's hard to win sometimes because of that. I mean, once you do get Janna down and start growing your units with the discounted cards, then it gets easier. But yeah, you kind of feel behind the 8 ball a lot of the time. Darius is kind of like Evelynn. Actually, Darius is a lot like Evelynn, where he's a pretty good champion, but he can kind of draw bad, or because he's so hyper aggressive with no defense, sometimes the enemy can just cheese you out. Like they get like an elusive or something like that, and you just can't deal with it, and then you just lose. So Darius, he's a good champion, but he's a little bit risky. Leona is also a good champion, but the problem is she's just slow. She takes time to set up, and then her payoff is also very slow. Like she will eventually gain tons and tons of stats on the board, but by then, like you're really fallen behind and you're trying to catch up, so it's a bit harder. Again, she's not terrible. It's just she's a bit slow, and that sometimes really gets emphasized in monthlies. Kaisa, actually, I kind of feel the same. She's not as slow as Leona, but she also doesn't accelerate as much as Leona once she comes down. So she's just another champion that can fall behind, has trouble catching up. That's why she's low. Bard, I know people are going to get upset about this, but Bard is not that good in monthlies. He's just not. He like to do the Bard thing takes too long. It's too slow. Like he's like Leona and Kaisa, where he falls behind, and then the problem is he takes forever to catch up. So yeah, use Bard when you kind of want to like waste a champion usage. Pyke, okay. Pyke, I don't know where to put him because I haven't tried him at 5 mana, but I can tell you that Pyke at 4 mana wasn't good. So he already wasn't good, and now he's a lot worse. 5 mana is a big deal, by the way. There's a chance I might actually move Pyke into the F tier because he might actually be that bad now. I mean, it's frustrating because what he does is really cool, and what he does actually does catch you up on board very quickly when you fall behind. But at 5 mana, you might have lost the game by the time you're able to like catch up. So that's not good. That's not good. You can't you can't catch up if you've already lost the game. That's the problem. You have to not lose the game first. So yeah, Pyke, I've got him at the bottom of D tier. He might even be going to F. And then we've got our classic F tier, Nasus, Thresh, Ornn. I mean, Nasus and Thresh do actually have a little bit of a niche in monthlies. There are a few monthlies where Nasus can try to farm some stuff. For example, this isn't a great example, but I was going to say the turret ones. But yeah, the turret ones are actually a little bit harder to farm. Maybe something like monkeys or something like that. Nasus can farm them. And then Thresh also is one that can farm them as well. If they've got kind of like a bunch of small things, you can try to farm them with Thresh as well. So Nasus and Thresh are pretty bad, but at least there's some times where you might want to use them. And then you got Ornn, which is just like there's no mutator that actually favors Ornn. There's no like interesting equipment mutator for Ornn, and he's bad. So you basically use Ornn where there's a challenge that's so easy, it's like, why not? That's your usage of Ornn to save using other champions. And the last thing I'm going to say too is, I mean, although he's not available yet, Aurelion Sol is coming very shortly as well. So, I mean, I don't know where I would put Aurelion Sol because I haven't played him. My best guess is he's going to be S tier. I actually don't even know if he's going to be like better than Jinx or LeBlanc, even at 4 stars, which is crazy. Just because Jinx and LeBlanc are so good, he's probably going to be here. He's probably going to be like in the middle of S tier. But I mean, that's speculation. Nobody has them yet, so we're just guessing. All right, so that's going to be the champion tier list for monthly challenges. Make sure you keep checking on my guide. So I have a Path of Champions guide Google Doc. I'll put the link in the description because I do change this over time. And a lot of people might think, well, why are you changing it if the champions aren't changing? And there's a very good reason for that. It's because mutators change. So Riot actually adds mutators. And as new mutators are added, we get more counter picks. So there's actually a good reason why my list changes. It's not because I don't know how to value the champion. It's because there's new counter picks. And so, for example, like a better example is Kayn. Before a couple months ago, I don't even know if we've ever seen the Formidable mutator. And then like the past 2 or 3 months, we've gotten tons of Formidable mutators, and Kayn is all of a sudden a lot better. So that's the reason why these champions move around. All right, well, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found it useful. I know a lot of people had been requesting me to do this, so I finally got around to doing it. And good luck in your monthly challenges. I hope you guys can all get your 70 wins and get your Aurelion Souls. All right, take care.